Good day and welcome to a new video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Hey y'all, and today you're joined by me, and you're also joined by Zach Howard.
Hello.
Hey everyone, welcome to another stream. So yeah, today I've got Zach Howard. You can check his work out at zachhoward.com. You also have a DeviantArt called Space Fried Crunk, which is pretty interesting.
Yep. It's an old inside joke from back when I did a book called Outer Orbit with a friend many years ago, and just kind of stuck.
Awesome. Sounds interesting name, eh?
Very old book I did with an artist many people probably know named Sean Murphy. It's like 2005 through Dark Horse. Basically, just a space adventure, irreverent humor book that we did. Pretty crass, actually.
Awesome. Was that like your first DeviantArt site creation?
That's the only DeviantArt. I guess I don't understand the question quite, but the DeviantArt site, it just, I think I originally made that site shortly after I did that book, so that joke was still fresh, and then I just stuck with the name Space Friend forever, or ever since. Is a better way to put it. So,
well, it was kind of the first time you created DeviantArt in a way, which that's good. I think I made mine in 2009.
yeah.
It's only been around for like 10 years, I think, 11 years. Not too long anyway, but it's definitely, I feel it was bigger back then than it was now.
Way. Substantially. It was the first place that I really found where pros interacted with each other while interacting with fans. Amazing gallery setup. And then, I don't know, a few years ago, 8 years ago, I don't even know how long ago, they suddenly changed format and everything, and since then it's just tumbleweeds there now for the most part. But it's that's where I keep all my bigger gallery pieces. If anybody ever wants to see kind of like a timeline of my professional career since 2009, I think the first piece I did or posted was a Spider-Man cover I did. So yeah, it was about 10 years ago, I suspect. It has about 10 years of my crap on there.
Exactly. I mean, that's the kind of site it is. It has all your work from from day one. Usually there's a lot of artists that post from day one on there, and you see right to the end of how far they've come. It's you can post everything and anything on that site, kind of a thing.
Absolutely.
And with these other sites like ArtStation and sometimes your website or things like that, usually it's more just your good stuff usually. But yeah, it all depends how you want to use it. But usually you put your really good stuff, your best 10 or whatever on those sites. Yeah.
I've never used them, so I know I've had friends and a few employees that use ArtStation and really like it. But yeah, I agree with you. There is a beauty in being able to see progress shots and really a full spectrum of an artist's creation on DeviantArt, all collected in one place, as well as getting to see an artist go from trying things out to becoming a professional. And that happens a lot. That migration or progression on DeviantArt. That's always been fun. But again, I'm pretty ignorant on all the other portfolio sites. I just post on social media for updates, news, and progress shots for artwork, and then on DeviantArt, I mostly put finished comic book pages and things like that on there. Everything else just kind of, I don't know. I'd rather be outside. I don't really mess around.
Yeah, awesome. Anyway, so tell me about yourself. Like, where did you grow up and things like that?
Oh, well, uh, that's a bit tough. I grew up an Army brat. My father was a combat engineer, so I grew up. I was born in Alaska, grew up basically in several states in the United States, and then I was in Germany for a few years, Hawaii for a few years, and then back to the States, and now I currently live in Colorado. So I don't really have a home as far as a home origin. I guess I'm just kind of everywhere. The Northern Hemisphere. Wasn't until I was an adult that I ever settled in one place for more than just a couple of years or a few years.
Hmm. Awesome. Were you always drawing, or was it more of a thing later on?
Yes. Growing up on military bases and stuff, sometimes you're kind of isolated a little bit. So there's a lot of like Dungeons and Dragons and things like that I'd always kind of try and draw the monsters in there and such. And eventually, when I was in Germany, I could get a hold of the Conan magazines, which had stunning John Buscema artwork and stuff, and that got me drawing Conan and such. But by the time I got to college, after I was medically discharged from the Marines, I went back to college and I couldn't get into any drawing classes, so I ended up doing ceramics, which led to a fairly good run later in college, making a lot of money competing in art shows and learning how to be a professional artist by selling sculptures and vases and whatnot, and competing with them. But my thesis year of my degree, I had to take an illustration class, and that kind of led me back into comic books. And within 6 months, I decided I wanted to try and be a comic book artist again. So when I got my degree in figurative ceramics or whatever the hell I have my degree in, I immediately just spent the next 2.5 years in the lab trying to learn how to be a professional illustrator, working for a company called Steve Jackson Games.
Awesome.
Yeah. So,
awesome.
Been a weird path.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, we all have our different paths and ways.
Yeah.
About it, it's never like a straightforward thing. Just go to study, then get job, and from there it's always a struggle, and there's always challenges to come across. Yeah.
I agree.
It's. So straight out of college, what was your first thing you did? First job?
I was doing RPG manuals for Steve Jackson Games. They published a really popular role-playing, book game. And apologies to people if I'm not using the correct vernacular. But basically, I just made the game manuals look cool with pretty pictures. I was absolutely terrible at it, but what it taught me over those 2 years is learn how to draw everything and please the client. So I had to draw everything from pirates with knives to spaceships to explosions to inventing aliens, creatures, things like that. So it never let me be comfortable in drawing. I had to learn everything constantly, and about 2.5 years in is when they got the license to do the Hellboy RPG game for GURPS. And I think there's only 2 artists at the company that were interested in comic books. So we got the gig basically to draw the manual, and I got to do my first paid comic book, which was a 5-page Hellboy comic within that RPG, and that kind of launched my career from then.
Awesome. That must have been great to have something as big as Hellboy to create.
It was terrifying. I didn't have the skills quite yet. I don't even want to look at that artwork. That being said, that's part of the job. You're on the path to becoming a professional artist. There's going to be a time when you don't have the skill set needed for the job. You're just underneath it. And I think the people that truly find success in sequential storytelling or whatever art endeavor are the ones that figure out a way to get over that ledge of skill and start teaching themselves to be a professional, not look to others constantly for direction. And that was that moment for me. After that, I kind of took the hit and lost the fear. It was well received. I, then went on to 2 image series after that, and did a Bible book, oddly enough, and then went on to Batman for a few issues. Or in the DCU, I think I only did the actual Detective Comics once. And then I did Nightwing and I think something called Richard Dragon before I realized I didn't want to do superhero comics.
Yeah. Awesome.
At least not those.
So you do a lot of your work in ink. Where did that come from? Do you always use ink, and do you always love to use ink?
Yeah, I've been inking traditionally my entire career, and long before that, because I was, by the time I was 15 or so, I got really heavy back into comic books. Jim Lee was lighting up X-Men and everything like that. It was a really fun time for comic books. So I think my brain always thought in that way, black lines and black shapes, etc. So I guess I was just drawn to that. I guess I'm not against color. I used to paint and everything like that. I don't want to say that. When I think comics, I think in black and white first, long before I think color. So I don't know. Ink runs in my veins, man. I just love it. I bleed black. So anytime I get a chance to ink, I will. It's my favorite part of the job.
And like, what size are your inks? And then, like, how long would it take you to do a piece?
So, I draw pages at the specs for my page. I draw a little bit. Oh, apologies. Let me shut that off. Apologies. I thought I shut my stupid phone off.
Okay.
There we go. No more mistakes. So, I draw at 8.2. Oh, wait. I think it's 8 1/8 inch wide. And apologies for the daft American measurements here. It's 8 1/8 inches wide by 12 1/4 inches tall, which works out to, I don't know, 112% of print size. And it took about 4 or 5 years to figure out what size I needed to draw at to make the printed version of my work, all the lines crisp and etc., to make it pop in print. And that's what it ended up being. And I've been drawing at that now for, I don't know, 14 years. Yeah, there you go. The latter, what was your second question? Apologies.
How long does it take?
How long? Well, I can rarely do. It happens about once a mini-series. I can knock out a page or two in one day, like one page in one day from pencils to inks. That is rare for me, especially with how my style has evolved to be layered, such densely layered textures and such. But I'd say the average I enjoy it when I can get 2 full pages done in a week. Uh, Lots of times, like on the last Cape, there's a lot of density issues and how Jason Ciaramello writes, his tracking scenes. It took me a long time, and I was getting like 1.5 pages most weeks on that project, which makes for a very long project. The one I'm doing currently is it's quite a bit different, and I'm following a couple legends and what they did prior to me on this IP. So I'm going to kind of migrate my style a little bit and start cleaning up some of these obscenely layered pages that I'm doing, and rely on my design skills a bit. I guess in summary, or to shorten that, I'm going to try and reduce my texture threshold. My texture thresholds by about 20% on each page. Reduce it, pull it back. Yeah, I'm still experimenting myself on where I need to be on that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, everyone has their own pace, You kind of expect to be, every day you're producing something great, You gotta, take time for yourself as well, and, slowly just do things as you do. For me...
I've never... apologies. Go.
You go, sorry, you go. What were you gonna say?
I guess my speed, a lot of people will notice that's not a monthly speed. One of my issues with drawing monthly comic books was the overall quality. I can't spend all this time and effort on something that everybody involved in the project knows it's just going to be, it's not their best. It's as good as that. It's as good as it can be within the amount of time. And there are creators that can knock your socks off in that amount of time. But it's not what I want to do with the sequential storytelling medium. I've always been more attracted to how far you can push this medium and at what level of quality. I think stories that have a certain level of effort have a better chance of surviving, the artist's lifetime, which I think is one of my goals. I find publishers that are, willing to work with me at my schedule, and stem boredom off with having side jobs and things like that, whether it be with animation or technology or movies or video games or whatever. For the last 6 years, I've been balancing comic books with just trying a few, art directing a few different projects to see what I like. And what I found is all I want to do is comic books. So I'm really excited on my current project because it'll be the first time I've had just one job, probably since the first edition of the Cape back in 2009 or 2010. So we're going to see how fast I can make high quality books.
Yeah. Awesome. So have you had anyone like color your inks in, or do you always have to do it yourself?
Oh, you mean ink me? Yeah. Mark Irwin probably did the best job on Aliens, but overall, I mean, hell, one of the reasons I left DC is I was being forced. I was forced to be inked by contract inkers. Nothing wrong with that. They have bills to pay, but the quality, the thoughtfulness they're going to put into each page, it has to be diminished for them to get several pages done a day in inks. It's almost impossible to ink one of my pages in a day. So when somebody's doing 2 to 4 pages a day of my work, something is suffering. And again, that's not to slight any inker. That's their effing job, to get the production going. But it just took me a while to realize I needed to learn to ink my own stuff. And that's what I did on Shaun of the Dead. Chris Ryle over at IDW basically let me learn how to ink myself on that project. And by the end of it, I was doing a decent job.
Awesome. Yeah, well, some... obviously, if they're going to take your work and then, work from that, sometimes it might not be as happy as you working on it, because they might change things and obviously take away things.
It's a way more nuanced than that.
Mm.
I don't give a shit about change.
Oh, yeah.
It's a combination. Look, when Nelson, Daniel, and I work together, it looks like neither of our works. It's a combination. It's a marriage. It's a true marriage of the two, to create a whole new art or expression, for the storytelling. But one of my problems with inkers is they have a very narrow band of skills, and they become wizards at this certain brushstroke or this certain tool or this certain nib or blah blah blah. But it's really hard to go past what they're excellent at. They don't have, because for a while our industry kind of pushed everybody just has basically one job and just get good at it. The problem with that is comic books, sequential art is extremely complicated, and there's a million nuanced expressions that have to come together to harmonize to tell a story correctly. So if, say, an inker wasn't good enough to pencil a book, they're not a professional level illustrator at all, they're just really good with a few tools, you're taking the penciler and writer now have to fit within those corral of skills, within that set of skills, that whether it's an inker or a colorist or whatever, you're limited by that spectrum of skills of whatever the next person in line is. So, and I'm not saying I'm great. When I was drawing Batman, I was green as green gets, man. And people were helping me out. But I could also tell that no matter what my assigned inker and I did, we were both trying very hard. We couldn't get our styles to kind of marry. And it just became this really awkward style that I don't think either of us really were happy with. And that's the problem with, forcing creative members together that aren't even remotely on the same page as far as the direction of their careers, what they're trying to do within this story or each individual page or each individual panel. And by no means am I casting blame. This is just a reality of how the industry developed. So that's why I left instead of burden people, and I started my indie career because I have a higher percentage chance. And it led to now where I get almost all full creative control on my projects, except for the one I'm doing right now. But I entered that knowing this. However, backtrack. I by allowing other people to do what they wanted to do with the project and following my path, I think it really freed me and also galvanized what I was doing in my career was actually what I loved. And I think that's important.
Awesome. That's good. So, what's your favorite thing to draw?
Oh, geez. I have a love-hate relationship with drawing. I love storytelling, but I find drawing tedious. Usually. Occasionally, like when I was drawing Wild Blue Yonder, I found myself making sound effects when I was drawing like planes explode and stuff. So I do have fun at moments, but it's mostly a very quiet, serious thing for me. And how I pace and design my books with all these layered textures takes a long time and burns a lot of energy. So I don't always enjoy the process. I just love the result. So I'm willing to go through the process. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough, I mean, there are challenging times when I'm drawing and creating, and, tough times and things like that when I'm creating, I'm having no joy with it. But there are times that I do enjoy it as well. I do enjoy the process, but yeah, I do enjoy the end result. I like seeing, like, because I'm creating this kids book at the moment, I like seeing each page come alive. You know, each page is amazing. Seeing what's happening with the characters, how the characters are reacting.
Hmm.
You know, that drives me to keep on pushing on this book and this project. Um, yeah, there's just certain things that make me drive, but there are those tough times because some of these paintings take me quite a while.
Yeah.
Some paintings and drawings that I've done have taken me 2 or 3 weeks. Um, and, I've been at design school where I was drawing for a project for 2 3 weeks, and it's like I got really tired and things, and then I got another push from one of my teachers there saying, "Oh, you still need to work on this. You still need to work on that on this drawing." Um, and it was tough, keeping working on this drawing because I was just over it. But I kept going on it a little bit longer, and it turned out, I think it turned out pretty good from there. Um,
Outstanding.
hmm.
I to just digress back to your first point there. Yeah, I think it's very important when you have a successful page to understand why, because you're going to get that little dopamine release when you finish a successful page, not just a finished project. But to your point, during those tough times, you gotta find ways to self motivate, and a lot of that is finding the successes of what you have accomplished. And so, in that moment, it's very important for, I think, an artist to recognize what succeeded and what didn't, and to also to appreciate that moment when you did succeed, to allow yourself that brief moment, that dopamine release that, again, puts a little bit of wind in the sails. As you probably know, this is a long process. You're basically just chopping wood for months on end, with no end in sight. So when you're on those jobs that have no end in sight, make sure you're pointed in the right direction, but then keep your head down. And like I said, it could be a giant redwood tree. The only way to chop it into pieces is just keep swinging the axe until you're done, and don't think about how far you have left to go. So I guess I'm straying away on a tangent from my commentary on your point, but I think that was important, that don't get drunk on yourself, but because when you're growing, it's not always going to be comfortable, and it can be scary, and conquering your fears and your weaknesses is a significant part of becoming a successful artist, I believe, or any type of storyteller, or at least to work in a very dynamic way as yourself, as I don't know. I think honesty is a huge part of being a successful artist, and I see a lot of people lying to themselves. I wish more people would self-identify their weaknesses, and instead of trying to hide them, make those weaknesses your strength. I did this book called Clockmaker, with Jim Kruger right after I did Hellboy. That was one of the 2 image series I did. And I got my first, it was like in Wizard magazine, that old school thing. And the reviewer said it's a really neat book, blah, 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 blah. But the artist, they knocked a couple things. They criticized a few things that I did, and rightfully so. Again, I was very, very green at the time. I'd only been drawing for 3 years. So, it was a steep curve at that time as far as my learning curve. Anyhow, the reviewer said about my finger. He said my fingers resemble beef jerky, I believe, and I was really offended at first. But once I got over that hit, that somebody would criticize my hard work, I realized it was a severe deficit. If I'm going to have characters that people emote with, or empathize with, which is a critical part of storytelling, there's two elements you have to master, and that's facial expression and hand movement and hand gesturing. Those are, yeah, there's obviously body posing, etc., character acting, things like that. But hands are critical for human emoting, and they're so effing dynamic. So I just set on a mission to get good at them, and nowadays I get a lot of compliments literally just on my hands. So uh, uh, I guess the moral of that story is make your weaknesses your strength. Don't be afraid. We all suck at everything when we start. Just try conquering things instead of hiding from them. And in that, you'll become an honest artist and storyteller. And once you achieve the skill set level harmonizes with your understanding of yourself and what you're trying to achieve, I think that's where brilliance comes from. All the great stories that we've read and loved and experienced almost always include that level of harmony.
Yeah, that I totally agree. Everyone obviously has some sort of weakness, and you learn from it and you grow and things like that, which is awesome.
Yeah, don't be afraid of mistakes. You try not to make them. You try to be prepared, but we're all going to stumble. Identify why you stumbled and do everything you can to mitigate that from happening again. And eventually you're going to run out of things you have to fix. It's more about mixing the ingredients together to achieve what you want rather than having to learn skills that you're grossly deficient in. And if you have to learn something, once you've mastered a few things or you become very well versed in them, I don't know if anybody masters anything as far as art goes, but I think you understand what I'm saying. Once you become an expert in something, it's easier to become an expert in other things because you built those neural pathways in your brain. You understand what it takes to go from I suck at this to I'm great at this. And once you do that with a couple things, you have kind of the formula how to conquer things or obstacles and your deficiencies, and you'll gain momentum, like a gravity of your abilities will gain a certain weight, I guess, and that thus create a gravity. I think in your career, people be more attracted to your work because it's expressed at a higher level in a more truthful manner. You're not trying to be some other artist. You're being yourself, and sticking your footprint on the ass of your lifetime or the world or whatever you want to think. To finish that lovely analogy.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's exactly. You're not trying to, be Picasso or anything. You're just trying to create your story, tell your story, create what you want to create and tell, and also help others tell their stories as well.
Exactly, that's part of the journey. We all, what was it, Newton said, we stand on the shoulders of giants. Same for the art world. I didn't get to where I was without Frank Miller and Mignola and just a bottomless well of amazing artists from all the way back to childhood, John Buscema, etc. All the way back to Eisner and Alex Raymond, etc. I mean, hell, how much credit does Alex Raymond get? Half the damn industry owes, what he did in that, Flash Gordon strip, to it's maybe not a direct line to what they do today, but it influenced somebody that influenced them. I can guarantee it. So I think that's an important thing to give back to your community, because life's hard. We're all ultimately alone on this journey, so it's good, to spread goodwill and actually help people rather than cajole them, if that makes sense.
Exactly. You've got to feel that you're not, superior per se. You've got to get to their level. That's the way I feel. You've got to seek out that you give them help rather than everyone owes you, kind of a thing.
The greatest people I ever met, the most successful, at least in my opinion, have always been very altruistic people. You know, you don't get rich by necessarily saving money. I think, and I mean that, I guess, metaphorically. The richness of life comes from what you do, you know, for your community, for those around you, while you're on this journey. All the greats helped others while they were climbing the mountain, is, I guess, what I'm saying. I think it's important to continue the line.
Yeah, awesome. So who in your past would you thank for your
Thanks. Shit. All the way back to Brian Stelfreeze. When I was taking that one semester illustration class, I went to SCAD, and he gave me like a couple hour personalized portfolio review, and I'm sure he knew it, but what he was doing. But I mean, he gave me all the initial fundamental building blocks I needed to teach myself about storytelling in those 2 hours. Just me. I found him in a room, and he sat me down at a table, and we talked. So he gave me hours of his time, and basically was the initial kind of spark that lighted, you know, this trail I've been on to master visual, you know, storytelling. Steve Jackson Games, I want to thank them, you know, for giving a frickin' Potter an illustration job in their magazines. I learned how to draw in those 2.5 years. It was just like combat every day, but damn it, they gave me the platform to be able to teach myself, and pay me a few shekels at the same time. And probably after that, Chris Ryle over at IDW. I did his first comic book, Shaun of the Dead, and that kind of launched me as, you know, the indie artist I am today. So, you know, I would say that was one of my bigger, hell, he's twice. He did it with the Cape, too. When I said I'd give him one more issue, and it ended up being the Cape, you know, which is, you know, to this day, the most acclaimed book I've done. So, yeah, I'd say those people. There's been countless others along the way, and I apologize to anyone hearing this, but those are the 3 big turning points in my career.
Awesome, that's great. Yeah, I don't know what else.
We don't have to ask anything else. We can always, you know, do more later. People can ask me questions online. I'm pretty open. Hit me up on any of my social sites. I usually check in once a day or so, or every other day, and happy to answer any questions anybody has about anything. I guess, Daniel, good luck to you and your book that you're doing right now, and your schooling. That's you got a lot to balance, and it'll be exciting to watch where you go with your career.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I actually have finished studying, so at the moment I'm doing a bit of schoolism courses when I can. You know, I just kind of at the moment I'm just listening to them. Because, you know, I'm working on my own projects, but, you know, I'm taking in what they're saying, you know, kind of use what they're saying. Like, there's a bit about character that I've been learning, and I've been trying to apply that to my characters. I feel it's really helped just taking some time. You know, I'm working at the moment, and I get an hour's break at lunch. So for that hour's break, I was doing quite a bit of character art. You know, I was looking at some women's magazines and things like that, looking through and finding images of, you know, I did one of what's his name, Prince Harry. I did a page of Prince Harry and just trying to get his pose right, just trying to push things. You know,
Good.
You know, it's
That's
a
how
very
you do it, man.
it's a very, challenging thing for me. Yeah,
You're
definitely.
not alone in that. So never think that it's easy for anyone. That
No.
the most talented artist I've ever met in my life had a hard journey, and I mean that. One of the only prodigies I've ever met had a difficult journey to becoming a professional. So just know that, and it's part of that difficult journey that turns you into that folded steel samurai sword. You're constantly being folded and built and forged. It doesn't. You're not cast in one fell swoop. You think of yourself as that samurai sword, constantly being folded until you're an unbreakable, weapon. And I think it sounds to me like you're doing exactly that. So that's good to hear.
Thank you. Yep. Well, yeah, you can check his work out at zachhoward.com or also spacefiedcrunk at deviantart.com. Yeah, awesome. That's
I'm on Instagram,
Instagram.
Twitter, and Facebook as well. Just type my damn name in.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining me. This has been I've done part 2 of page 11 of my book that you saw, and yeah, we've had Zach Howard in to talk, so it's been awesome. I want to thank you for coming in and chatting.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it would be awesome to have you in again one day. That would be awesome. But
Sure.
yeah, thanks everyone for coming in. Have a good one. Keep drawing and creating, everyone, and we'll see you in the next stream. Goodbye.